Hi everyone, welcome to the STEM Scholars Snapshot video focusing on the major in biology. So before we go on to talk about the biology major, I thought I'd introduce myself. My name is Daniel. I am the founder and director of STEM Scholars. I am a senior at CUNY Queens College. And my primary focus of study is biology, as well as biological anthropology. So on the screen, I shared an image I took in one of my labs. It's a 7-day chick embryo stained with vital dye. And then also one of my favorite specimens we have in the bone lab, which is an actual child's skeleton. And you can see some of the permanent teeth and deciduous teeth. So I geek out over this stuff, as you can tell. I also do research at Queens College. I work in a developmental biology laboratory, and I study how germline, or I should say stem cells, differentiate and become specialized cells in developing organisms. And I decided to make this video along with some of my other colleagues to kind of give you guys a little bit of an insight into the biology major. When we're focusing on biology in college, the generalized goal is to introduce students to the fundamentals of biology, including things such as cell biology, molecular biology, anatomy and physiology, ecology, evolutionary bio, and botany and phytology. And in every course that you take when you're majoring in bio, the primary focus is going to be to explain the theory of certain biological concepts by introducing certain experimental methods that highlight that particular fundamental concept or principle in biology. And in cell biology, for instance, you will learn about different filaments, right? So microtubules, microfilaments, and intermediate filaments. And when you take cell biology courses, hopefully you'll get the opportunity to stain a bunch of cells with different antibodies and different stains to identify microtubules, actin, and DNA. So this is human cheek cells that were stained with antibodies against microtubules, and then utilizing a stain for actin as well as a stain for DNA. And you can see the DNA is right here. Pretty cool, right? So let's talk a little bit about the major. When you enter college and you want to major in biology, if you end up majoring in bio, your first 2 semesters or your first year are generally going to be courses that are just general. They're general biology courses. So you'll take General Bio 1 and General Bio 2. And in those 2 courses, the primary focus is going to be on the history of life as well as the history of biology. So you'll learn about Mendel's genetic experiments, for instance. The courses then will cover the cells and all of their cellular components, all the organelles, and how the cell maintains its structure, how it lives, how it functions. Then you may go on and talk about the different cellular and histological anatomy and physiology of both plants and animals. I wasn't really fond of the plants when I took General Bio 1 and 2. And finally, the last concept, the generalized concept that you do end up learning about is the different life cycles that exist between plants and different animals. And one thing I wanted to point out is that a lot of these concepts you probably would have learned about them in high school, but when you come into college, you get a much more detail-oriented approach to those concepts in a shorter amount of time. And eventually, if you do end up majoring in biology, these concepts that you learn in high school and then in college, they all build up on top of each other. So that way, when you get to the upper level courses, you have this generalized knowledge of these fundamental principles of biology. Now, let's say you go on into major in biology. You are now in your second year, you're a sophomore. In your second year, you are going to hone on specific principles in specific branches of biology. For instance, at my university, at my college, we have 3 principles courses that you take during your second year. Those include cell biology, genetics, and ecology and evolution. And in these courses, the primary things you're going to learn about will include the central dogma of biology in much more detail, right? So the dogma of biology is, right, gene to protein to function, right? You have genes that are transcribed, then translated, and into protein that has some kind of function in the organism. In genetics, you learn that a little bit more in detail, and you also go through detailed mechanisms of how the cells replicate their DNA, their genomes, and how they replicate themselves, right? And in ecology and evolution, the primary focus is on kind of talking about how different organisms came to be, talking about their phylogenies, their evolutionary histories, things like that. And now you go on to your 3rd and 4th year. The 3rd and 4th year are actually my favorite courses because they're really specific courses that hone in on specific fields in biology. So the common concentrations across all universities and colleges include things like A&P, anatomy and physiology, molecular bio, cellular bio, marine biology, ecology, evolutionary bio. And one of my favorite courses is the class that's offered at my school. It's the cellular biology techniques lab, as well as developmental biology, since I am doing research in developmental biology. And I just highlighted these 3 across the board. These are the most common concentrations that you have to choose from when you go to any kind of STEM university. Just want to talk a little bit about the different disciplines. So anatomy and physiology pretty much includes A&P of organisms and plants. And generally, again, when anatomy, study of the structure of the part or organ or tissue, whatever. And physiology is referring to its study of its normal function, how it's supposed to function. And in these courses, you generally go through this dichotomy between the structure and the function. They have some kind of relationship where the structure conveys a specific function on that particular organ or structure. And again, a lot of these classes in anatomy and physiology are going to be used to serve as a prerequisite for a lot of these graduate programs in medicine and nursing, et cetera, et cetera. Molecular and cellular biology, another one of my favorites. You will learn about pretty much what I mentioned before, learning about DNA, RNA, protein, central dogma of biology, cellular replication, different types of genetics, hereditary genetics, Mendelian genetics, right? You learn about organelles and their structures and their functions. You'll learn about immunology, so how your immune system reacts to different foreign microorganisms that invade your body. Virology, looking at viruses. And one of my favorites, histology, looking at different tissues and the structures underneath the microscope and functions. And one of the coolest histological samples I like to look at, I love to study bone, and that's just one of my interests. And so I'm majoring in biological anthropology, and we have a lot of opportunity to look at different osteological specimens. And this is one of those specimens under a microscope. This is a cross-section of compact bone. So again, really cool stuff and really interesting stuff. Did you know that you can tell how old a person is by looking at the number of these circular units of bone? Pretty cool, right? Moving on. One thing I also wanted to mention is that when you major in biology, sometimes support courses may be required. And what do I mean by support courses? These are courses that generally enhance your knowledge of biology and also kind of work together to give you a cohesive experience in sciences. And a lot of times when you want to go into the medical field, you want to be a doctor, you want to be a researcher, you want to be a nurse, you are required to take a lot of these support courses. And these courses include things like general inorganic chemistry, organic chemistry, general physics, calculus, and or statistics. Okay, so and I'm pretty sure everyone's familiar with the periodic table of elements. And then if you look all the way to your far right, you see benzene, which is a common aromatic compound that you use in organic chemistry reactions. Hopefully you'll learn that when you take organic chemistry. Now, quick overview of the biology major, and now I want to talk a little bit about my own personal experiences, how I kind of took those classes and what it was like for me when I got out of high school. So my freshman year, first semester, I didn't take any sciences. I just thought, no, I'll try and see how it goes. I came into college with a background in sciences. So I was part of the Health Professions Academy at my high school. I took anatomy and physiology. I took human diseases class, which focused on immunology. I took the standard biology class taken in high school. I took AP chemistry, AP psychology, AP biology, and I ended up just going into college, not taking any kind of science class my first semester. I wanted to get assimilated into the college environment, and I suggest you do the same thing. Don't rush it. Take your time. In the spring of my freshman year, I ended up taking General Biology 1 and General Chemistry 1. General Bio 1 was very difficult for me, in part because of the professor, but also because I wasn't used to that level and that amount of work I had to put into studying for that class. And it was very difficult for me, I'm not gonna lie, but at the end of the day, I sat down, I studied, and I got through it, and I had a good experience. And yeah, that is me 4 years ago, standing in front of a biochemical pathway poster in the science building of my school. Go on to sophomore year, I started to take a little bit more specialized classes, more specific classes, but I still, in the fall, I took General Bio 2, General Chemistry 2. Didn't have a good experience in both just because of the types of content I was learning. But then come around spring, and I did pretty good in spring, and I loved spring. And genetics was pretty fun, it was very interesting. And my favorite class was the human skeleton that semester. And this is again with that same picture that I showed on a few slides back of the human child skeleton. And just to point out, the classes that are highlighted in red are not biology classes, but they're actually anthropology classes that very nicely complement my interest in biology. And again, so just going through the pictures, this is a technique that you learn in quantitative analysis chemistry. This is diffuse paper chromatography. So you're learning the process of diffusion of liquids and then looking at the scale of colors that come across as liquid travels up the paper. And this is a gemme cup of a liverwort, so of Morcantia, that I found pretty cool when I took general biology too. So it's like plant biology. Come junior year, I took evolutionary medicine, took organic chemistry, and also primatology. Spring, took human paleontology. So if you guys know what paleontology is, it's pretty much the study of ancient humans and ancient human ancestors. And primatology, study of primates, so monkeys, apes, things like that. And in the summer, went on to take chemistry, organic chemistry too. And again, this is a distillation apparatus from that class. In my senior year, I took biochemistry. I took the techniques in cell biology, as well as interpreting the human skeleton, going on to take developmental biology and general physics, one lab and lecture. It's a mouthful. It's hard sometimes, but throughout my career at Queens College, I have figured out how to do well in these classes, and I really enjoyed some of these classes. I loved biochemistry, loved cell techniques, and I loved interpreting the human skeleton. Really, those are like really amazing classes. Now, what can you do with your biology degree? Is it worth getting a biology degree? Well, let's find out. So there are different types of biology degrees. Let me just look this up a little bit. There is the Doctor of, so first let's start off at the bottom. You can get a Bachelor of Arts or Bachelor of Science in biology. Often the Bachelor of Science is the same as the Bachelor of Arts, but the Bachelor of Science includes some other requirements. So sometimes it will include physics as a requirement and or a undergraduate thesis. My school doesn't have a Bachelor of Science yet, so I'm working towards my Bachelor of Arts. Once you have gotten your bachelor's, you can get a master's in biology, and then your doctor of philosophy in biology. So, as an example, at my university, after a Bachelor of Arts in biology, you can get a master's in bio, and usually have two options. You can get a master's in MCD, which is molecular, cellular, and developmental biology, or you can get a master's in ecology, evolution, and behavioral science, so EEB. If I was to go personally, I would choose the molecular, cellular, and developmental pathway because that's what I'm interested in. But yeah, these are the different levels of degrees that you can get in biology. And with a bachelor's, you can start teaching biology teaching laboratories. So biology 1, intro to biolab, whatever it may be. With a master's, you can also teach biolab, and you can also do research. And with a PhD, again, research is pretty much your life, and you teach classes as well on the side. In all these cases, you can do research with all these degrees, or even as you're working to get your bachelor's, you can do research. So some major skills that I have developed while majoring in biology. I'll name a few of the ones that are really important. One, I would say problem solving is very important to me. You're able to sit down and work through problems more efficiently, more quickly. Understanding biological theory, very important to me as well, as I want to go on into medicine. Oral and written communication was a big one also. You learn how to talk to faculty, you learn how to talk to other students. So that was very important. And also things like technical skills, operating scientific equipment, teamwork, very important skills to have when you're entering the medical field or if you're entering biology. And just a disclaimer for those that have not picked up on this yet, but the undergraduate degree in biology does not necessarily lead to a, I should say, career as a physician or any other kind of professional occupation that you may associate with biology. Often you do need to get a secondary degree to go on to fulfill that hope and dream of becoming a doctor or becoming a research biologist. However, if you do major in if you major in biology as an undergraduate, it is a great way to learn about many and different biological processes. And let me tell you, it's really some cool stuff. So what can you do? I will have this slide up on our website. Take a look. These are just some opportunities that you may have with a major in biology. Just take a look and see. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out. Now, some of my tips on succeeding in biology. So, I know that some of you will ask me, how do I study these classes? What do I do? I have a 4-step method that I use to study. And before I show you that 4-step method, let me just say one thing. When you're studying for these classes, you want to make sure that you're not just memorizing things. You want to make sure that you're fully understanding the concept. To do that, it takes time. So don't be afraid to give time to your studies. For every hour of lecture, you should be spending at least 2 hours to review, honestly. So let's go through my 4-step method. So my first step is to listen. You go to lecture and you just sit there and you listen, okay? But make sure that before you go to lecture, look through your textbook and look through the slides so that you have some kind of idea of what is being talked about in that class. Okay, so go to lecture and listen and make sure to record the lecture, okay? And I always tell students to have printed slides with them just in case you want to write something down that's kind of important, but you don't have to. But do record your lecture. So that is me in one of our lecture halls. Yep. And I'm going to sit down, I'm going to listen to a lecture, and I'm going to record. You pay attention. When you're writing things down and someone's talking, half of what they're saying, you're not getting into your head. You want to make sure that you're paying attention to what is being said in front of you in the lecture hall. The next step is to study. And I always emphasize either the next day or later that day, depending on what time the lecture was. Some of my bio lectures were late at night, so of course I could not study that same night. But the next day, I made sure that I sat down and I listened to the recording. As I was listening to the recording, I would take notes on my printed slides, okay? At this point, you've had contact with the material twice, and meaningful contact, because one time you listened to the lecture, you got something in. The second time, you're revisiting it again, okay? Now, you may be asking, well, I have a textbook. Don't I read it? Yes and no. Your textbook is not, it should not be read passively. You use your textbook to look up something that you do not understand. Because if you take time to read your textbook, I promise you about 80%, 75% of what you read, you will not get. There's no way, okay? So as you're listening to the recording, if you do not understand something, stop the recording, go in your textbook, use the index in the back of the book to find the topic, and look it up and read through it, okay? If that doesn't work, you're still stuck, email your professor, talk to your classmates. Don't be shy about that, okay? If you're like me, sometimes you have a short attention span, I suggest you use something called the Pomodoro technique. And this technique helps me out a lot. Basically, you set a timer for 20-25 minutes, and you work for 25 minutes. When the timer goes off, take a 10-minute break. And you do this over and over and over until you finish your goal, okay? Very, very efficient. And so this is an example of some of my notes that I took for biochemistry, this is what it looks like. So my professor put up slides on our on the website, and I downloaded the slides, and I didn't like the way they looked. So I took the pictures and I set them up myself so that they correspond to each topic. And I went to the lecture, I listened, okay, I took some notes, of course. But then the next day, I went to my Dunkin' Donuts, I sat down, and I started listening to the lecture again, and I took notes. I took notes on my slides so that when it's time for me to review my slides, I have notes that help me understand the concept. So the third step is to review. You have to review the material once you've gone through it, once you've studied it, okay? And I review either one of two ways. I will either lecture out loud to myself, so I'll put up the slides on a TV in my room or in my house, or I'll go to an empty classroom, pull it up on the screen, and I have a clicker with me always, and I go through each slide using my annotated slides, my notes, and I lecture back to myself with full detail. And as I lecture, I also start to draw things out on the board, right? So, for example, this cycle, I drew this out on my board in the classroom as I was reviewing the concept. Okay? I was lecturing myself out loud. Okay, and let me tell you, over time, that helps out a lot. One other thing, I'll get to it in a sec, but this is just an example of what I mean by draw things out. Because if you draw it out, you talk out loud, it will stick. Trust me. Yes, I was studying different parts of different bones on the skull, and I ended up just drawing the temporal bone, the mandible, and then I believe the end looks like the zygomatic and the maxilla. So the zygomatic is a cheekbone, by the way. Yeah, so I just drew them out, and everything stuck. And the fourth step is your practice. You should practice with multiple choice questions, the textbook problems, whatever was posted online by your professor, and some, okay? And at this point, you've made contact with the material about 4 times in a meaningful way. Okay? It's all about meaningful contact with the material, okay? If you do this 4-step plan, this 4-step procedure, when you prepare for the exam, you know exactly what you need to study up on, what you have a hard time understanding, okay? Another tip of just another piece of advice, I should say. When you're doing problems that are math-based or require you to think something through, write everything out on a piece of paper, or go and find a board, write everything out. The givens, the knowns, whatever. Write everything out and then solve. Talk to yourself. Have this process to talk to yourself. That way when you take the exam, when you're sitting there silently, you're talking to yourself quietly, okay, in your head. Okay, it's just some of my advice. A few pointers. Study to succeed. Put time into your studies. Don't be too shy to spend more than 2-3 hours on one lecture. It's better that you succeed knowing, it's better that you grasp the concept than to kid yourself and not understand. Gain industry mentors. Talk to your professors. Ask them why they got into biology or research or whatever they're teaching. Okay? Speak to and plan with an advisor. My suggestion, you talk to an advisor within your major department. So if you want advice, talk to a professor in biology. Okay? Talk to upperclassmen. Talk to seniors. Talk to juniors. Don't be shy. Text us on Facebook, find us, whatever, we'll respond. And utilize study groups. Form a learning collective where you all get together and you talk things through. You learn things together. And finally, join a community. Okay, so that's me and my friend Josh, and he's also the associate director of STEM Scholars. And I met him through a program called peer mentoring. Through the HSI STEM grant. So we both work as peer mentors for General Biology 1. And these are the things that we tell our students when we talk to them. Join a community, talk with people, discuss things with people, learn with people. It makes things so much better, trust me. And finally, just some tips for succeeding in college in general before I end this video. So just a few things, right? Be responsible and be active. Stay control of your studies, don't miss class, don't fall behind. If you fall behind, it'll be really hard to get out. I've had firsthand experience. Have set educational goals. Know why you are in college. Know what you want to achieve. If your first year in, you don't know, don't worry about it. You'll figure it out eventually. But just have that in the back of your mind lingering, okay? Ask questions. I should have bolded this one. Don't be afraid to ask questions. There's no such thing as a stupid question. Trust me, there is not, okay? You are confused. You want to talk with someone, talk. You're having a problem, talk with someone. Talk it over. Be organized. Have everything organized. Know where you're going to study. Know when you're going to study. How you're going to study. Okay, and part of being organized is also having good time management. Right. Follow a daily schedule. Okay, and try to study at least 20 hours a week. Give or take, depending on the classes you take. Right, obviously, and how well you pick up on things. Know how to study. Talk to people again. Ask them how they study. You'll be surprised how that you may actually find a way to study that you have not thought of before, and a friend is using it, but you're not. And you'll find it, and it will help you get through college very well. Okay, and finally, turn in your assignments on time. I think that's a given. All right, so with that, I just want to say, enjoy college, right? It's not always about school. You want to enjoy, make friends, join some clubs, and just don't be shy. I was really shy when I first came in, and I learned better, and everything became better for me once I got to know people throughout my college career. All right, so I hope that was somewhat helpful. I really had fun talking about this stuff. Check out our other videos on the neuroscience major, the English major, the chemistry education major, psychology major, etc. Right? I'll talk to you guys next time.